You take something that's big and make it small, or take something that's small and make it big, you look like a genius. We are analog creatures, and yet we live in a digital world. I also talk about a boring to annoying kind of line. And we always are so afraid that we are on the annoying side of this dichotomy.
Yeah.
And the real reality is we're mostly on the boring half of it.
Welcome back to Live Chat with Jen Weaver. I'm going to be really honest here and tell you that if you only listen to one episode of my podcast, this is the episode. So today I'm speaking with Anders Boulanger. He's the founder and CEO of Engagify, where he helps companies make their customer-facing teams and events more engaging. His book, Engage First, is out on October 7th. I got an early copy and I devoured the whole thing on a plane. It's a spiritual successor to How to Win Friends and Influence People, but for the modern era. I highly recommend it. I was delighted and a little bit starstruck to talk to Anders. We dig in to how to use his techniques developed through his experience with close-up magic and trade shows for support leaders to engage their teams. Spoiler, if you engage your team members in your meetings, it means better retention long-term for your whole team. The stakes are high here, but this is a super fun episode, and I just know you're gonna love it. Before we get started though, our QA tool Support Man is what makes this podcast possible. So if you're listening to this podcast, head over to the YouTube link in the show notes to get a glimpse. Support Man sends real-time QA from Intercom to Slack with daily threads, weekly charts, and done-for-you AI-powered conversation evaluations. It makes it so much easier to QA Intercom conversations right where your team is already spending their day in Slack. All right, on to today's episode. This is a total new thing for me because you wrote a book and I just read it and we're going to talk about it. Your book is called Engage First. Is that right?
That is right. And thank you so much for reading it. We were just kind of talking about that. And it's like, it hasn't been released yet. So it's kind of like cool to talk with people who've read it. And so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's cool for me. I hope you're ready because I have a lot of thoughts. As you know, our podcast is for customer support managers. That's our audience. So a lot of the struggles that they deal with are managing up, like how do I convince leadership to implement things or to hire, managing reports and how that can be weird and interesting and it's difficult to create team cohesion. And on that note, remotely, because a lot of the audience is managing teams and managing customer support virtually, right? And I, in my career, have had managers and direct reports who I'd never met in person. So I think you have a lot of tips that would be great for that. And actually, I have one queued up that I loved from the book. You talk about props. I had using props in your presentations, and you are a magician, so obviously that's a thing that you do. Yeah. I love that. I worked with a manager, she wasn't my manager, who she used a single prop. I don't know how she did this. And to create such team cohesion, I was at a retreat with them. And after everyone had gone to bed, her team was up laughing and like all in a room together. And I passed by and I went in and it was all about this little hand. She had brought in, and at the retreat, she had given everybody one of them. It was some kind of team mascot, it just became this funny thing that they all rallied around.
Yeah, those are so funny, like the tiny little hands and actually one guy I talk about in the improv or one of the other comedy chapter is a guy named Richard Label, and he does a lot of emceeing for Engagify, and he has a pair of those little hands that he brings with him wherever he goes, and he'll say, "Come on, let's have a big hand for our last presenter," right? And he'll go, "That wasn't a big hand. That was a little hand." He pulls that out, and it's just there's so many different options to make, or just opportunities for that little prop, right? I think there's something I read somewhere. A friend of mine told me about this. Like, if you take something that's big and make it small, or take something that's small and make it big, you look like a genius, right? And so that's just kind of fun and cute because of that. But application of props is that there is an interest factor there. And I always think back to, I mean, I love science, so I took a physics degree and everything, but I remember when I'd walk into the science room, or like whatever class. I was from a small town, so every class was in the same room, whether it was chemistry, physics, or biology. You walk in there, but you saw something set up on the bench that was going to be a demonstration, right? Or something that we're going to try to recreate. And automatically you kind of go, what's he going to do with that stuff? Right? Like and same thing as a magician. I grew up watching a magician with all his props on stage on his table. And again, I'm a magician, so I'd be more interested in that, but I'd be like, what's he going to do with those? You walk by a street performer who starts setting out his props to music. He hasn't even started yet. But you start going, oh, I want to see what he's going to do with those torches. Like, they're going to be lit on fire, right? So you're seeding some sort of moment that's going to happen, and people, it sets up a story loop in their mind. They want closure of that, right? And so they pay attention. And so whether you're trying to get a team on board, or just listen to you, using a prop as a visual aid that's not PowerPoint, using a prop to use as a metaphor for some sort of thing that you're trying to lead your team through, and the idea of something that fits in your hand actually has a greater psychological impact. Because when you just held up that little hand again there, Jen, I know what that hand feels like. It's rubber and it's squishy, right? And so because I have experience with that, there's parts of my brain that are lighting up, right? If I was holding a pen, most everyone has held a pen in their life. When you see someone doing something that you have done, there's a part of your brain, the mirror neurons fire, and we actually feel connected to that person. So these props aren't just about making things cheesy or, like, we're not trying to go there. But there is something about them that unites us and connects us and will make our presentations more relatable, whether that is a Zoom call where you're just having an all hands or a team meeting, or, you're trying to do a presentation, a keynote, whatever. The props are powerful.
That reminds me, I've seen some YouTubers just like have a whiteboard or something and draw instead of do a PowerPoint. And I wonder if that's kind of a great hack as a support manager. Like, if I just need to draw something out, right? Like, I can do it physically with a pen and paper that somebody else knows what that feels like, and kind of create that mirroring.
There is an analog thing to it too. Right? We are analog creatures, and yet we live in a digital world, right? And so there's something about, a slick slide deck is nice, right? And it's to the point and everything. But sometimes, and I've been doing a lot of this where I use my iPad and I will share a drawing. And so the drawing is still kind of digital, if you will, but you're seeing every pen stroke, you're seeing and it's messy, and it's in the moment though too, right? Like, when you explain something, and we can almost kind of go, there's a lot of different ways you go with that. But when you explain something that's in the moment, and you're not something you say all day, you're being present for that person, and so you're creating something, you're co-creating something together, right? Like, I'm making this for you. This is not a slide deck I pull out all the time and use all day long. And it's that back of the napkin kind of impromptu feel. But there's also something about drawing that draws people in, is that they don't know where you're going with it, really, right? Like, you really have to pay attention because you're trying to make sense of that thing. So there's a lot of like engagement principles kind of built into that is unique, different, and kind of fresh again, because we can do this.
Yeah. And what that's making me think of is, in your book, you have this triangle, right? And since we're talking about drawing, I'll just do this.
Yeah.
And
Look at you.
it's I mean, I love a good Sharpie, right? So you talk about basically at the bottom here is text communication.
Yeah.
You've got like texting with somebody. And then just above that is, using emoticons, which have some face to them. But at the very top is in working in person with somebody. And I thought, as I was reading this about, there can be tense difficult situations when you're managing people. And I think
Sure.
escalating to that better, more in-person version of communication is always a good tactic when things start to feel maybe a little tense.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, that triangle, like, or pyramid is this hierarchy of communication that I have that you drew up. Yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
so if we just think about that, like text, if we're texting back and forth or an email, there is a bit of a time delay too, right? You're reading it a little bit after, depending on whenever you pick it up, right? And so depending on the choice of words you use, there are things you can explain and you can do it. But I'm sure your listeners have all been in a position where they're like, oh, this is not coming off good. You're starting to ask ChatGPT to rewrite this. You're just like, you're wanting to address something that maybe is sensitive and you just don't want it to be taken the wrong way. And then, the emoticons, emojis, are a way of doing that winky face and all the like. And I'm not even all up on all the emojis anymore, right? But the
Mhm.
idea that we can at least add some tone to it, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't take this the wrong way, is what we're saying, right? Like, take this
Yeah.
in context.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
go above that. Yeah. And then we've got the
Yeah.
voice conversation. And actually, because we were having trouble with my video before we started recording,
Yeah.
well, that's all you had from me at first, right? And so
Mhm.
we have that as well. So at least now we're hearing how people say something, right? And that's,
Mhm.
if you are dealing with something delicate, that tone of voice is powerful. Like my wife,
Mhm.
she'll go back and forth and text with her mom, and I talked about this in the books. And I'm like, just call her, right? Like sometimes the amount of time we save having a 2-minute conversation as opposed to
Mhm.
stretching out that conversation over hours sometimes, right? Going back and forth
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. So that understanding that when we hear a voice, we're reassured, we can support them in a way and it's real time, right? That's the first time we get to real time. I'm watching you and you're nodding your head, and
Mhm.
this is going to where we're going now, virtual. Because if
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
quiet and you're
Right?
just nodding your head, I'd be like, Jen, you there? You there?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
nodding your head. I can see you're
Mhm.
engaged, you're in agreement. There's positive body language there. So
Mhm.
virtual is obviously as good as we can get without being in person, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
That would be
so
here in person at the
right at the
top.
top.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so how can we elevate our communication to that level that is going to be the most effective,
Mhm.
right, for
Yeah.
the situation at hand, right? And I'm
Mhm.
not saying you have
Yeah.
to jump on a virtual call or jump on a plane and meet with someone in person for everything, but there are certain
Mhm.
things that getting to the top of that triangle of that pyramid is going to be better for. So, yeah,
Mhm.
you nailed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and what I love about your book too is it kind of opens up these questions for me. Like, sure, I want to be virtual and I want to do the best I can, but ooh, sometimes I don't know really what I'm doing, or I don't know how to handle a real in person meeting, especially about something maybe that's a little tense. And you kind of close that loop with, well, the hack is to have an intention. So if I'm going into a meeting and I'm just in this meeting and I'm doing the best I can, then it's kind of nerve-wracking. But if I go into a meeting and my intention is um, to move this person from a place of disengagement to engagement, well, then I'm tactical. Then I really know what I'm doing, and for me, it's calming. It's gives me.
Mm,
You also talk about taking on a persona
yeah.
as a way to perform, to be in a meeting and be calm. And I think they're related, right? Like I'm acting, I'm doing something here that gives me an intention and moves me through the event.
Yeah, I think when you focus on others, that helps you get you out of your head in the first place, right? So you're kind of like you're there to serve them, right?
Mhm.
Whoever's in your meeting. And to
Mhm.
do that, sometimes we have to be things that are greater than ourselves, or maybe what we think is greater than ourselves, but it's actually in you, right? And
Mhm.
so that persona piece we talk about, Sasha Fierce being, that's Beyonce
Mhm.
Knowles' alter ego, and for the
Mhm.
guys who are basketball fans, Kobe Bryant, his was the Black Mamba, and they
Mhm.
were names for a different side of themselves that they would show when the chips were down and they needed to really bring it, right? And
Mhm.
I know from
Mhm.
Kobe's point of view, he was kind of so competitive and so ultra competitive. He was almost nasty that he had to remove himself from that because he didn't want to, so there was some kind of psychological safety behind that, I think. We don't
Hmm.
have to go that far,
Mhm.
right? But it's the idea that we sometimes have to bring a little part of ourselves out that maybe we didn't know we had. And
Mhm.
I've done an exercise with people where I will assign them an avatar that is kind of like, so if someone's, let's say, kind of monotone, and it's hard to pay attention to them, right? And you have to have
Mhm.
some awareness to understand that, but in our trainings and in coaching, and I'll say, you're going to be the kindergarten teacher. So you're going to do, let's say you're doing an opening of a meeting or you're doing presentation, but you're going to do it like we're kids. How would you keep our attention? And so now that person, you'll see their modulation is all over the map. And they're like, hello, Jen. So good to see you and everyone here on this virtual call, right? So it's bringing a part of them out and
Mhm.
also giving them permission to be a little bit different, right? To kind
Mhm.
of be a little more performative or whatever, just to do something. And then this is a rehearsal technique. The directors would work with actors because they're trying to pull something out of that person. And then they would just go do it normal again, right? Like whatever, like if we were practicing, I go, now forget we did that. Just do it. A little bit of it sticks behind and it
Mm.
adds a little bit more, modulation and it makes it better. And then for some people too, when we get feedback from a group, they'll say, how was that? And everyone's like, you should do it like that all the time. Like you actually don't think, you might think that you are annoying,
Mhm.
but how modulated it is and you're embarrassing yourself or whatever. And everyone else is going like, that sounded awesome. Right. And so sometimes we need that little tap on the shoulder and that kind of thing and that self-awareness and giving ourselves permission to work on ourselves in a way that's,
Mhm.
that I mean, again, we're talking about actors, we're talking about performers, athletes, they think about this stuff and they do this, but sometimes we're so busy in our jobs, we're just head down and shut down and just do what we've always done and we get what we always got. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
just another way of looking at things and to create that engagement, with your team.
Yeah, when you're virtual, it's the only interaction that this is the only me that people on my team know, right? Or people listening
Yeah.
to the podcast. And so, and you also say, and this was new to me, when you're virtual, when you're on camera, your energy needs to be, I don't remember, like 30% higher, right? And just for it to feel normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the camera kills the energy. Well, you're by yourself in a room,
Yeah.
like I did a lot of virtual keynotes during the pandemic. And, you'd like the time you'd be taking applause, it's like, and then we just like turn it off. And you're like, and I'm alone in a room, like that's, it's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
weird
Yeah.
feeling. Right. And so in the story I tell in the book is that I had to do with this kind of like a virtual trade show invite video. Okay. So it was kind of
Mm.
like they wanted people to come to their virtual booth and there was this video and virtual trade shows. That was a really weird time. But anyways, they said, hey, Anders, we want it to be peppy. We want it to be high energy. And I'm like, do you guys know me? Like, come on. Like, I can do that. Right. And I'm recording it in the same studio that we're doing this call from. And of course, it's like a 30-second little message and I'd be able to watch it back. And then I went, huh, that's not that peppy, right? Like I could use more, even though I felt like I was over the top. And this relates to, yeah, exactly what we were talking about. And so then I started realizing, wow, you really got to, kill it to actually get where you think it should be watching it. And so again, I also talk about a boring to annoying kind of line, right? And we always are so afraid that we are on the annoying side of this dichotomy.
Yeah.
And the real reality is we're mostly on the boring half of it. And
Mhm.
we most of us never get over to that side. And I'm saying the extremes, like the extreme of one side is boring and the extreme of one side is annoying. And there's a sweet spot in the middle for everyone.
Mhm.
And you kind of got to
Mhm.
find that sweet spot. And so, when we've talked with people, and we kind of coach them up and just kind of like, hey, I think you could bring a little bit more. And then they realize that gets results, and they see it, in people leaning in, or people paying more attention, and people aren't off tasking and on their phones, and just like, hey, this is working better. That's that pat on the back that performers get as feedback to know, oh, this is the right level I need to be at, right? So we're often coming underneath what we think we should be delivering. So we got to actually over deliver just to get where it needs to be. So yeah, 3%. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that with podcast guests or with colleagues who just show up and have a lot of energy and like are excited to be there.
Sure.
I rise up and match that, and you talk about mirroring and matching, which I've heard about before. Like if someone crosses their legs one way, then subtly I might cross my legs their way to kind of entrain with them. But virtually, it's a little more challenging. You talk about modulating the speed of your voice to match the other person's, or the tone to be deeper or higher, kind of matching with them to trigger those mirror neurons so that they're with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot more difficult in virtual, and this is one of the reasons why it's not at the top of the hierarchy of communication, right? When we are with people, I mean, I can only see we can see the same amount of ourselves right now, right? Like I could move back a little bit more and you'd see more of my arms and everything, right? We could do things to kind of give that. And there's also sometimes too, like there's some people, I'm walking towards my camera for the people just listening, getting right up in the face of the camera. Sometimes we're like, whoa, okay, give me some space. Like it almost feels like we are in your face, even though it's just in the camera. So, it emulates the in-person, but we're missing things. Like we're not breathing the same air here, right? We can't feel like I had friends that were comedians trying to present during the pandemic to virtual audiences, and you can't hear every, little guffaw or laugh, or like the feedback is not there, right? So, and when you're one to many, let's say, you're managing your team, to develop rapport with each individual is kind of impossible in a sense, right? If it's one-on-one, we have a good talk, Jen, we're going to be vibing, there's going to be a certain wavelength that we resonate on. But one to many, you might be good with one person, but not hit the other person, right? So, there is some generalities, some shotgun approach you can do. And we talk about group rapport. And I don't know if I cover this in my book, but group rapport, when you get people to all do the same thing and the same, whether it's something with your body, I often do this thing, and because we were recording, we'll do it together. Put out your hands like this. This is a little kind of a magic-y thing, but yeah, put out your hands. So I got your hands about 6 inches apart, your thumbs are up like that, okay? We're gonna turn our thumbs down, okay? And then we're going to put one hand over the other hand and interlock our fingers. Okay. So we're kind of locked out like that. And then lock out the elbows, Jen, like so they're straight like that. That's good. And now do exactly as I do. Breathe in, breathe out, and then do this up to the top. Twist those.
Whoa.
Yeah. So for people just listening, Jen's all locked up. I was able to do it. She wasn't able to do it. Even though we looked like we did the very same thing. Yeah, we got a very different result. Okay?
Yeah.
And so I often use that little experiment. Okay, Jen, release. Okay, let go.
I'm done.
Stay in the moment.
Yeah. Yes.
But I often use that at the start of a talk or a training because everyone will be in this mindset of like, oh, here we go. Like another one of these or whatever. And it's a pattern interrupt. Because they're like, I don't know what we're doing. We're using our hands as a prop in a way. But at the same time, because I'm forcing everyone to do the same body movements as me, we are all connected in that sense. We're creating group rapport, right?
Nice.
So if you are speaking in person and you ask an enrolling question where you say like, how many people this morning brushed your teeth? Raise your hand, right? Everyone's going to put up their hands. I mean, it's a dumb question to like, ideally it's a little bit more driving some value for the talk, but I got everyone to raise their hands. At the same time, I'm raising my hand. So we're mirroring and matching, in that sense. There's also something called stealing rapport. And that's when and it works best where, let's say there's an MC and someone's on stage. And if the MC is very likable, you want to start where that MC introduced you. You take over that spot, that spatial area of the stage that was occupied by the MC. You want to speak in a similar speed, in a similar tone, even if that's not you, just to start out. And everyone will be like, I like this person. Like they seem like I'm going to give them a chance. I'm going to listen, right? And then you can gradually come back to yourself or go where you need to go. But if the MC's horrible, you want to do the opposite. So you would go in a different area of the stage and you'd speak differently, and everyone's like, oh, thank goodness, right? Like, I'm glad it's not like that person, right? So that, like I said, that works a little bit more on a stage in person than virtually. But there's some fascinating psychological stuff about rapport and really trying to bond with people and have them bond with each other too.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about some hacks you could use with virtual calls. And in your book, there's you reference another book that has, I think, a list of ways to hook people and get them engaged. And so that's on my list.
Yeah,
Jolts.
That's right. By Tyagi, and they call him the bad genius of training. Okay, so he has a bunch of different unique. He's just kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, there people kind of ask themselves that question, but then there's relevance to it, and there's an aha moment, and people go, oh, and when people have ownership over the learning and that aha moment, they figure it out for themselves. It's so much more impactful than just saying, do this, right? This is the right way to do it. It's, you're managing a team, but if you need to train them on something or something just as an icebreaker, those jolts by Tyagi, and he's actually got a longer Indian name, but they call him Tyagi, Thigi. IAGI. Yeah. So
yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah. You mentioned relevance, and that's something you talk about a lot. And I think I've had the painful experiences of being managed by somebody who just doesn't get what's important to me, who maybe tries to motivate me with salary, which I love. Everybody loves money, right? But I know for me and for people who have taken the time to get to know me, my ability to choose my own work and to really have an impact are what motivate me. And I think that's what I was thinking about when I was reading you talk about relevance. And like, if as a manager, I'm trying to motivate my direct report, but I don't know what really motivates them, then I'm completely irrelevant. And I think that's a huge bridge between being an entertainer, being an infotainer, and being a manager that's the same. You have to give a message that's relevant to that person.
Yeah, for sure. If the relevance isn't there, relevance is like an engagement hack. It's like, it's just the whole reason for actually doing whatever you're doing is the relevant part, right? So, being able to like you said, motivation, typically you can break down motivation in something you don't want or something you want, right? And if you can find those things, because some people are better motivated with the stick than the carrot in front of them, or the carrot can be different types of carrots, kind of like you're talking about, right? The right type of work, the right type of compensation, that kind of thing, or the right amount. So, finding out what your audience wants is a big, coming back to that. Like we often, in our trainings, just to kind of condense some of that stuff in the book, we use an acronym called SAVE YOU. And SAVE YOU is, if you are not getting the engagement, right, this will save you. You fall back on this. So
I'm here for it. I know this is something people pay for. I've seen this on your website. So this is a little
there we go. Bonus value. So the S is simple, making it simple and easy to follow. We spend so much energy in our brains. Like it's only 2% of our body weight, but it's 20% of our energy goes to our brain. So it's a real hog on resources. So whenever people get overwhelmed, cognitive overload, this idea that just it's too much, they tune out. They start thinking about what they're doing after work. They do, whatever. So keeping
Mm-hmm.
things simple, that's good. All right. And my original acronym for Save You was longer. And I'm like, I'm not even, following my own directions here. So let's get the A is authority, right? And it can also be authenticity as well, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how do you carry yourself? If one of the classic undermining things that people can do, and this I'm sure we'll see it with managers as well, is this, talking a little bit with too much up talk at the end, some intonation. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so they kind of start going up at the end of their sentences,
Mm-hmm.
and now everything sounds like a question, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now you're not getting, it doesn't sound important because it sounds like, well, you're telling me, you're asking me, right? And it's confusing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's just one little example, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
how we can be a little more authoritative. And when I say authoritative, I don't mean a tyrant, right? It's just,
Mm-hmm.
but who the message comes from and how it's delivered is just as important as what is being said, right? And that's, that not what we
Mm-hmm.
say, but how we say it kind of piece, right? But that's a portion of that. The V is the visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And when we were talking about rapport, there are people who are more visually, they talk with their hands. They're going to say, "You
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm
It's
saying?" That
me.
kind of thing. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
You got auditories who are a lot more. They're going to use the words that have to do with sound. Yeah, that's right. So, does this sound good
Yeah.
to you? Right? That kind of thing, or that rings a bell. They'll use words like that. And they might even be a little bit more melodic with their voice. They might be musical, that kind of thing. And then you got the kinesthetics who are like, kind of, sometimes they're a little bit more slower speaking. They're in their body, right? They're kind of, a lot of dancers, athletes might be like that. But those people, if you just talk with whatever your preferred representation system is, if I'm visual and all I say is see this, you're kind of turning off some people. So when we talked about this like shotgun approach to create rapport with all of those people that are, on a call with you, it's different again, one
Mm-hmm.
to one. Just use the one they are, and that's going to connect
Mm-hmm.
them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to want to mix those types of words just to kind of keep everyone engaged, okay, and play to that audience. So we got the SAV. E is emotional. And whenever I say emotional, it's not like, don't be emotional. Like, it's not like we're crying or anything and we're trying to make people feel sad, but it is good to make people feel something, right? And I mean, the tone of our voice, whether we're really excited and we're just like, you hear a little bit of a little bit of saliva in your voice and you're excited, that's going to rub off on people. Whether you're making a joke, you just giggled, right? You found that humorous, you're feeling something, right? I think certain work cultures, certain companies, I know that I've worked for them at trade shows, they might be so buttoned up, that it's just all business, that business is all logic, right? We are living, breathing, feeling machines, right? And we need to acknowledge that, but also let's harness that, you know, make people think, but make people feel, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the emotion.
Emotion.
And then the you, the whole reason I started talking about this is you focused, meaning the relevance piece. So
Mm.
it matters to the person that you're meeting with, then that's important content to be, keeping them engaged, right? So again, it goes back to evolutionary things. Like, am I being chased by a lion? That is relevant. I need to know that. Is there something good to eat? Right? I need that to survive. So, if it's going to hurt me or it's going to help me, we want to know about it, and that's going to be that you focus piece.
Yeah, there's an exercise you recommend that I think is super relevant for support managers, counting the yous and the me's in like taking a meeting, maybe that I was in with my direct report, for example, and running that transcript through maybe ChatGPT. And how many times did I say you, your, what's going on with you? And how many times did I say I, me, mine? And I think it's sort of like the AI note takers now that will tell you how much of the meeting, what percentage you spend talking. That's one
Right.
thing. But how much time do you spend talking about what that other person needs and is interested in?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that is just, again, something quantifiable that we can look at. And are we focused on the right person? Because, yeah, it feels good when people are talking about us and concerned about us and asking about ourselves, right? So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, a great way to support your direct report, and just really make sure you're giving them what they need.
Yeah, there's a real business case for that too, because as you mentioned, employee engagement is a huge, important metric for businesses. And you mentioned it comes directly from our one-on-one calls. How engaged are you with your manager? Like they say, people don't leave a company, they leave a manager, right? And so getting more engaged and more you focused with your direct reports has a direct effect on the bottom line for the company.
Yeah, and I think if, one of the neurotransmitters that we say that drives engagement is dopamine, right? And then the other one is norepinephrine. And dopamine's the new reward, novelty, that kind of thing. And the norepinephrine's the stress, right? And again, that goes back to that evolutionary thing we talked about. Am I going to get chased by the lion, or I'm going to, get something I want? And if you as a manager are spiking the dopamine, whether it is talking about them, whether it is rewarding them, you're actually, dopamine's how people get addicted to their phone. This is how they get addicted to drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's these things that fire off in our brain. So, when we create engagement, meaning being engaging, wanting people to watch us and listen and pull that content, but in terms of engaged with your manager, there's this, a lot of similarity there. Like, how can you get people be addicted to you, even though you're there to help them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, this just goes back to we're usually so worried, what we're going to say, the content, that we don't give as much thought to everything around it, right? All the window dressing, all of that. Like, and you just mentioned ChatGPT, like knowledge itself is getting very cheap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is free at some level, right? So the idea that with an internet connection, you can ask AI whatever you want, right? Or you can look up whatever you want. And so now it's not so much about the knowledge, it's about how do we transfer that knowledge, or how do we communicate that is received, And that's the engage first kind of philosophy. We can't do any of that until we engage first. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally recommend your book for digging into that. It's eminently readable. I zoomed through it. I love it. I'm implementing some things. There was one thing in it, in getting more engaged and being more human and less maybe replaceable. And that's humor. And it's really tricky. And you mentioned that too. It's hard because you can offend people. You could just, like not land. But there was a trick that really hit home for me, and that was you mentioned calling the moment. Can you explain that?
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
like teach us that.
Yeah, it teaches well. Calling the moment. Let's talk about kind of what it is, and it's kind of when you're experiencing something with a lot of people, and no one's really put their finger on it, and you just kind of say it. It doesn't actually have to be terribly clever or anything. You just are the one who said it out loud. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah," and they totally relate. And there's kind of that thing may have even been causing some tension, and when you say it, it releases the tension, and hence laughter, hence this and a feeling of connection. And one of the examples in the book is I was going down a very narrow escalator, and it was just like I felt almost like my hips very much only were almost touching, like, and I'm not that wide of a person, and I said, wow, can this escalator get any narrower? And everyone on the escalator laughed, right? And it was just so, again, there's not a lot of intelligence behind it. There's not a lot of wit, but it's sometimes just saying something out loud that calls the moment, and then people unite behind that, and it's just it's usually a harmless thing in that sense, right? It's just kind of a situation we're in, and it's the truth. Truth and pain are the ingredients to comedy. So yeah.
Truth and pain. And I think you definitely have inspired me to dig into that further and to experiment and kind of record what worked and what didn't work. And I think doing that as a manager is really great. Can you speak to that a little bit? And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you even mentioned already the transcripts and like throwing them in ChatGPT, like the
Mm-hmm.
idea that we have this ability to have our own coach, like you're managing your direct reports, and yet you can self-coach in a lot of ways with those transcripts and looking at that. I often, when I'm looking at performances or at the end of the day, I write these after action reports, which is stolen from like Navy SEALs, from just military AAR. So after action report sounds cool, but it's kind of like, hey, what worked well, what didn't work well, what's still lingering, what's a
Mm-hmm.
stretch goal for next time. And it's just, again, the feedback that performers get is instantaneous. And in the corporate world, we just don't get that feedback, right? And sometimes people, and depending on your listeners, how often they're meeting with their direct reports, like that feedback is valuable, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how it's delivered, but just getting some in the first place, because they kind of like, a lot of people go through life going, how am I doing? I don't know, like so. Uh, so that idea that we can give ourselves our own feedback, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
look back when you have that one-on-one with someone, what were your notes from that last meeting for
Yeah, that
yourself?
becomes data. It becomes data you can look back
Yeah,
at over time. How
yeah,
engaged was this person?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, what
Mm-hmm.
worked, what didn't, because then you start realizing, yeah, are they the carrot or the stick kind of person? Are they, what did they respond to, or did you try something? And I often talk too about, when you are doing something all the time and you've got that mastered to a certain level, what is that next level for you to take? What's that next intention to take with you, right? Like sometimes I've been at a show and I remember I'm like, I'm really going to be thinking about my body, like how I move, right? Just like, I just really want to be,
Hmm.
I want people to watch how I move. And that's like the one thing I bring in, because everything else I've kind of got, like what's that extra layer of complexity that we want to add onto that, instead of just doing the normal thing, right? Like just that constant never ending improvement. There's always opportunities, but we sometimes just need to look in the mirror and kind of make the decision to want to improve. Yeah.
That's really inspired me. I hope that I didn't launch into this podcast with too much energy, but I really took that to heart. And I was like, I'm just going to have energy this time. Like I'm going to just bring it. And so, yeah, it's already changing how I'm working. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing your book ahead of time with me. It comes out in October.
Yeah. Sneak peek.
Yeah, that's feels super special. I really appreciate it.
Well, well, thank you for bringing the energy, Jen, because
Yeah.
we are feedback animals, right? Like, and just you doing that pumps me up, and then I bring it, and then it keeps you up, and this sort of thing, right? So let's, as we kind of are that pebble, in the water, and the ripple effect of how we interact with people, that if we only knew how we impact people, and that's the sad thing. We
Mhm.
sometimes never know. We'll never hear it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and how
Mhm.
that then can impact others. So, yeah, I appreciate you
Yeah.
bringing me on, and I had a ball.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've had a huge impact on me. Thanks for being here. I hope everybody has enjoyed this. Yeah, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
All right, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, this has been a super special episode for me as a book lover. And I actually came away from recording this with a lot of ideas, not just about how to up-level my presentation skills, but my whole attitude about life. So, I just want to run through those steps for how you can be a better, I think, happier leader by engaging first. So, first, using props to spark engagement. Bringing a tangible item to meetings can be humorous or symbolic, but it's memorable. It doesn't have to be tiny hands. 2, choose the right communication level. Think about that pyramid: text, audio, video, in person. We want to move up the pyramid as much as possible. Set a clear intention before each meeting. That's number 3. If you define the outcome you want from a meeting, like moving this person from disengaged to engaged, it calms your nerves and sharpens your presence. 4, turn up your energy by 30%. on video calls. It will feel like too much, but it often lands as just right on camera. If you've seen me on this podcast, I am turning up my energy. So if you feel like that's just a baseline, think about doing that too. 5, adopt a persona to guide your performance. Use a mental avatar like kindergarten teacher to unlock different versions of yourself. This can help you with nerves and self-expression. 6, if you anchor your meetings in relevance, then before delivering information, you're asking, why does this matter to them? That old what's in it for me idea. Motivation is very personal to individuals. If you're motivating a team, think about them specifically. And 7, if you can review your meetings for your you versus me ratio, that will really level up your engagement. After a one-on-one, check that transcript. How often did you say you or your versus I or me? That balance speaks volumes about who you are prioritizing. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been fantastic for me to connect with Anders. Please do subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think would benefit from it. That does a lot for me as a creator, and I just hope I'll see you next time.